Illustrate Digital and Liberty have worked on a good number of campaigns together. We've seen a great deal of success across some of our mutual clients. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Gareth. I'm a big fan of his team and the work that they do in terms of the campaigns that they run, the way that they approach what they do. Even just having an agency that has, specific strategic arm to it is a great advantage for them as an agency and a great advantage for their clients. And yeah, like I say, the sort of campaigns that they run, huge success in some of those, and I'm sure Gareth will tell you a little bit more about that. But yeah, pretty much other than that, I'm going to shut up and hand you over to Gareth, and yeah, we're going to hear from him.
Right, are you able to see my screen?
We are.
Marvelous. Okay, thanks for that introduction. I can't believe I didn't have to pay for that one. Today when Scott asked me to come along and talk to the tech businesses of Wales about how they can improve their marketing, there was one sort of obvious topic for me to talk about. And that is Google Ads and pay-per-click. And for a number of reasons. I think one of them is because this is great for tech businesses, and in particular tech startups, because in no other area can you really learn quickly in your marketplace and explore things than within Google Ads. So, learning quick, adapting, testing markets, testing audiences, even testing overseas markets are all really quick ways, quick things you can do with PPC. But also I think there's some really powerful, really interesting targeting options we got at the moment, which unfortunately aren't being used by many companies. But what we tend to see is the companies that use these well are often in the tech world, and they're often then running rings around their more traditional competitors. So there's loads of these, and I've only got 20 minutes now to sort of cover off some of the main ones. So my goal here today basically is to hopefully clear up any confusion anyone's got about audience targeting, hopefully show some new things, give people some inspiration to start seeking out and exploring ways to find their target market online and bring them to their website and convert them. One of the things with this, though, because this is a tech talk, that covers pretty much every marketplace possible, from B2B and B2C. And we work with fintech, medtech, cybersecurity brands at Liberty. So there's not going to be something here for everyone, but I'm going to go through a wide variety of examples and hopefully give everyone something they find relevant. First of all, a little bit into Liberty. Don't worry, this is not going to be a sales pitch. This slide is useful because it shows what we do and who we work with, and also gives you an idea of why I can talk with some confidence about these things. As an agency, we work with about 50 different brands on retainer basis, and also about a dozen others who we consult with on project basis. What this means is we got access to all of their data. We're talking millions of pounds a year in digital ad spend, millions of visitors through to their websites, a wide range of markets from B2B, B2C, e-commerce, lead gen, from startups to FTSE 100s. And so I can take all of that data at our disposal, all of the testing we're doing day in, day out, and I can share with you today what really works. And I think to start on the subject of audiences is let's go right back to the basics, the kind of things you're taught on a marketing degree, which is basically, who are we targeting here? What are they doing when they need us? Where perhaps are they? When they're in need of what we offer them, when are they doing the searching? And this is kind of a basic area. This has been around for about 10 years, but it's really important and it's underutilized. And it's basically a thing called bid modifiers. And so basically within Google Ads, we can tell the system to automatically weigh our budget and our bids to steer our advertising towards certain things. And these are the main criteria to start thinking about. Its location, the device type being used by that person, either performing a search or browsing the web, and also time. And that can be time of day or day of week. We can ask Google to automatically spend more or less of our money depending on these criteria. So start having to think about how that could affect your advertising. So an example I often use here is in retail. If I've got a store and someone is within walking distance of that store and they're on a mobile device and it's during shop opening hours, then that person is worth more or less to me if any one or all of those criteria are removed. You quite often find in-store purchases are a higher average value than online purchases, so maybe I'd increase my bids. But as soon as that person is not near the store, or if they're at home on a desktop, or if it's in the middle of the night, that's when I need to start thinking differently about what those visitors are worth to me. Obviously, on the retail side of things, during COVID is a bit of a different situation. So a lot of people who had a bidding strategy based on these things have quickly had to adapt it while their shops are closed, or whilst less people are on mobile devices. But in the world of tech, where this comes into play for a couple of clients, location bidding, for example, is a lot of tech clients will do industry events. They will do conferences. They're going to try and get people into those at a certain point in time. And there's a physical location, so that's something to consider. Device type, of course, if you're an app developer and you're launching, say, on Android devices only, then you could potentially reduce your bids or remove them for anyone who's on an iOS device. So there's plenty of considerations here. First thing I'd say is go into your Google Analytics, take a look at the people converting on your website, and start trying to identify which of these criteria actually matter. And then something that's a little bit newer than that, this has been with us for a few years, is you can also then layer on top of that demographic bid modifiers. So you can choose to spend more or less on someone depending on the age bracket they fit within, or the gender that they identify with. So have a think about, do you want younger males coming through to your website? Are they a target market for you versus older females? Therefore, you can spend more money on people performing those searches. When it comes to the display network, you've also got parental status. So you can choose to show your advert, show your video ads and your banner ads to people depending on if they are or are not declaring themselves as a parent. So this gives people a completely different bidding strategy. One example, the conversation I had recently was with a skincare brand where they're targeting males. Now, they could never in the past have bid on keywords like skincare or moisturizer or dry skin, because the majority of searches are performed by females. It would have been completely waste of budget for them. However, they can now get into that auction and turn their adverts off as soon as a female performs the search. So it's just, this is something that's quite big now. There's quite a few advertisers have cottoned onto this. So if this isn't something you're doing with your PPC, you probably want to start considering it, because your rivals may well be, and just start having to think about, how are you going to start spending your money a bit differently. When we know who to target and when to target them, the next step in audience advertising is their passions. Now, when it comes to the Google Display Network, which is the biggest network in the world of websites that host advertising, we've often been able to place adverts depending on the keywords on the pages, or choose to put adverts into certain categories. But we've now got signals that users send out that show what they really care about. And as advertisers, we can target them. The first of these is something called affinity audiences, and these are sort of broad buckets for topics of interest. So Google looks at the browsing history of a user, looks at the time they spend on pages, the categories of websites where they spend that time, and associates them with certain interest categories. So what we're analyzing here is someone's overall interests, their passions, their lifestyle, to get a better sense of their identity. And if you think about your own browsing behavior, there's going to be certain websites that you spend a lot more time on. There's going to be certain subjects that grab your attention and you go back to time and time again. It's very easy for Google to figure out what you're into. And so as advertisers, we can tap into that and start showing our adverts and displaying our products and services to these people. I'd say to view affinity audiences as a general long-standing interest for a specific subject. These aren't things that disappear overnight. And there's 100 of these ready to use, ready to go for advertisers. Some of them are absolutely enormous. For example, there's one called Beauty Mavens, which is people who are into the world of beauty. That's got over 50 million cookies in it. But there's a lot of niche ones as well. So there's one for DIYers, one for cooking enthusiasts. And this is something that's changed fairly recently, because this used to be on display only, but this is now available on search. So this can be really good if you're doing a bit of brand building. If you want to tap into a market of people you know that are going to be interested in what you offer, an affinity audience is a great way of doing that. But it's not just done with display ads and video ads. You can now also choose to advertise to people searching on keywords on Google based on the things they care about. Now, if we're being good digital advertisers, then when we hear about things like 50 million cookies, we consider that a bit too broad. We like to be a bit more niche, and so we can create our own affinity audiences. We can build ones here that are a lot more specific, and this is something that's recently had a fair bit of attention from Google. So traditionally, we could give Google a list of URLs and keywords and tell it to sort of scan those and figure out who should be in this new unique audience. And what you do is sort of put in a load of keywords that people in your audience would be searching for, put in some websites that they visit, and we'd often recommend you'd put in some competitor websites, but also a couple of the authority, maybe news sites in your marketplace. What you can also do now is you can choose to target people by the apps they've downloaded and also the videos they've watched. Google will take a look at all of these things. It'll look at the words and the themes and sort of associate an identity and find people that match it. Now, if you think about how this stuff could all be pulled together for a theoretical tech firm, I mean, if you were launching, say, an investment app, let's say I was putting together a robo-advisor, I would look at potentially, people who've recently downloaded other trading apps, such as Trading 212, who are also people who've recently searched for share ISAs, who've also recently visited stock tip websites and maybe been on Motley Fool, who are also watching videos on YouTube about how to invest properly. You can drill it all the way down to that small sort of group of people, and that would be your custom audience. So this stuff can be pretty targeted if you want it to be. Now, I think probably it's fair to say the holy grail for most advertisers and most marketers is having the ability to advertise to people just before they're about to make a purchase. And so we're able to eradicate waste and show them our products and our services at the moment that really matters. And we can do that now in a number of different ways. And so I'll talk about these for a couple of minutes. The first is one called in-market audiences. And basically, Google can qualify someone as being in a market and being ready to buy something. This is it's similar, but also completely different to the affinity audiences from before, because whereas that was to do with a long-term passion for a subject, this is very much a temporary interest, but it's to do with the same signals that we're sending out. So Google's looking at a lot more commercially at this. So it's looking to see, are you searching for keywords that have a commercial intent? Are you clicking on adverts? Because that proves you're actually in the market for stuff. Are you converting on those adverts? Because if you are, then you're no longer in market. It looks at the content of the websites people visit. It looks at the recency and the frequency of those visits. And it basically figures out if someone's about to purchase something or sign up for something within a number of markets. So, yeah, this is about temporary interest. And an example here is, I might not be a car enthusiast. Maybe I'm someone who doesn't care about cars whatsoever. So I would never fall within the automotive affinity audience. However, every once in a while, I'm going to purchase a car. I'm going to research car insurance. I'm going to look to I'm going to be going on car review websites. I'm going to maybe looking at car loans. And so it's very obvious to Google that I'm about to do something I don't normally do. And for advertisers, we get to tap into that, and we can choose to advertise to these people in that moment. There's dozens of these categories out there. I've got a little list here of some that are probably of interest to the people watching this today. There's one for education. So if anyone here is in the tech sector for training, that could be good. There's an in-market audience for employment. There's one for financial services, another for travel, another for consumer software, another for business services. So plenty of these where you can, as an advertiser, you can choose to go in there and start advertising to these people. Now, this is one that came out fairly recently. This has only been around for about a year and a half. It's called Custom Intent Audiences, and this is available across the display and video advertising networks. And this is quite a game-changing one because we're able to target in a completely different way. We can show display ads to people depending on the recent keywords they've searched on in Google and the recent websites they've visited. And what this actually means is we get to combine the intent of search with the cost of display. So with search advertising, the reason it costs many times more than display advertising to get a visitor to your website is because of the intent. If I'm going onto Google and I'm searching for a supplier to solve the problems I've got, or I'm looking for products to purchase, then there's a real intent behind that. I need a solution there and then. I need a product as I'm performing those searches. That's why the traffic's expensive. The reason traffic on display network is cheap is because I'm not in that mind frame. I'm off reading articles, I'm surfing the web, I'm maybe killing time, I'm not looking for a solution. With this, though, if people have recently performed a search on Google or recently visited your competitors' websites, you can now advertise to them with the cheap cost of display. So some things to have a think about here are potentially, is anyone in your marketplace going on comparison websites? Because that's a real intent that they're about to do something. Or if someone's searching for insurance and loan keywords and looking for a way to compare. How about if someone's on complementary websites or searching for complementary products? So perhaps I've got a company that builds apps for Macs in particular, or for iPhones, or I build keyboards for iPads. If someone is searching for iPads or someone's visiting the Apple website, potentially that's someone who's in the right audience for me. This is also really good for expensive keywords and broad keywords that otherwise would be a bit of a waste of time for you and might burn through your budget. And to give you an idea here of one example recently, it's not to do with tech, but it's a good way of showing how big an impact this can have, is a university example. So we worked with a fairly small university during clearing last year. And what you find in the clearing phase is there's this huge rush of universities all competing like crazy, and click costs can go all the way up to, we found they were just over £80 a click for the main keywords. Now, the problem for our clients is they were one of the smaller universities. They just could not afford to get into that fight. So we used custom intent audiences, and people who had searched for those keywords and people who had visited their main rivals, we then showed them display adverts. But because those people were in the market there and then, instead of spending £80 a click, we were spending around 50p a click, but the conversion rate was near enough identical. And what we also found is, whereas a normal display advert would get a 0.05% click-through rate, these things were getting around 1%. So this advertising was 20 times as effective as a standard display advert, purely because we knew that people seeing it were actually interested in what was on offer there and then. So sometimes these little things can make a huge difference, and sort of, I think the moral of the story here is just to start testing some of these out. And then finally, the sort of sobering fact is, it doesn't matter how much hard work you do when it comes to building audiences and how many of these things you layer on top of one another, because most of the people who come to your website will not do what you want them to do. Most of them need a bit more love and attention, and 96% of people will not leave your website performing the conversions you want. And you'll also find those in retail. A horrible stat is 70% of people will abandon a shopping cart without making a purchase. And we tend to find in B2B, and if you're looking for people to fill in inquiry forms, then it's 2 to 3 visits before they actually do that a lot of the time. So as advertisers, we need to think, what am I going to do to start getting that second, that third, that fourth visit? What's my strategy here? And this is where remarketing comes into play. So I assume most of you will have heard of this, because it's been around for probably the best part of a decade. It's something that's been evolving a lot in the last couple of years, but it's still not used very well by most of the brands I meet. The way it works is it's basically cookie-based. So someone comes along to your website and they perform certain actions, or often, just as important, they don't perform the certain actions you want them to. You can choose to put a cookie into their browser, and then you can give them a different advertising experience online. We tend to see that people on remarketing lists convert at nearly double the rate of sort of fresh face visitors that come through to your website. So it can be very powerful. But it's really good in certain sectors, such as B2B, financial services, a lot of e-commerce categories do well here, property. Anything where there's a considered purchase, anything where there's a bit of a long sales cycle, and remarketing is really important. The way to think about it and the way to really make it work is to consider all of the different actions that people can perform on your website, and what does that tell you about that person, and what you want to say to them differently going forward. You know, what's the different message you want to put into adverts to try and get that person back. And just start thinking about, you know, if someone's come along and they've downloaded an expensive product, or they've inquired about your top level service, then what do you want to say to them going forward? Because it should be something very different to someone who's come along and purchased a cheap product or purchased a cheap service. What about in the world of retail? The obvious example is people who abandon your shopping cart, or if someone comes through to your website and they get all the way to the download button but don't actually click it. What do you want to say differently to them going forward? This is great for cross-sells and upsells. So like in the world of travel, for example, save 20% when you add a rental car to your flight booking, tends to work beautifully. There's a cute little thing that my PPC team do here, is where they layer this up within market audiences. So if someone's come through to your website before, but they haven't inquired, they haven't bought something, they haven't downloaded something, they haven't signed up for something, it might purely be because they weren't in the market there and then. But it's now a few weeks or months down the line and they're showing signals to Google that they're in market. That's when, if you layer remarketing on it, you can grab them at the point of time when they're interested, and that's when you start seeing conversion rates go through the roof. Remarketing traditionally was the Google Display Network. So it was text ads, banner ads, video ads around a load of websites on the web. But the part that was missing, the sort of the little piece of the puzzle that we couldn't cover, was search. However, a few years ago, a thing called RLSA came along, which is remarketing lists for search ads. And this means you can give people a different search experience depending on what they've previously done on your website. So if someone who has been on your website previously is now performing searches in Google, you can choose, do I want to spend more or less on that person? Do I want to bid on different keywords for people on my remarketing lists? Can I afford to be a little bit more blasé about my keyword targeting because I know they're in the market because they clicked through originally? Do I want to put in a different advert copy because they responded to the other one but they didn't sign up? So do I need to try a different message here? And also, are there different landing pages I want to send them through to? Now, to give you an idea of where this can give you a completely different bidding strategy and a completely different way of advertising, is in the world of retail. So say, for example, I'm a retailer and I sell gifts online. I want sales because it's about to be Christmas and that's the good time for me. But I can't bid on broad keywords like presents or gifts for men or, you know, presents for mums, because they're just way too broad. Traditionally, I would burn through my PPC budget in no time. I'd have terrible conversion rates and I'm going to be in trouble. However, if people have previously bought from my website, I can now afford to outbid the other retailers. I can choose to be a little bit broader with the keywords. I can put in the advert that there's a incentive, an offer on at the moment for repeat purchasers, and I can send them through to a landing page that reflects that. So it allows me to bid on keywords in a completely different way and spend my money a little bit cleverer. Something to note here is you can also use this to exclude people. So if you've got a product or a service where if someone comes along and buys it or signs up, but in the future they're going to be doing a lot of searches for like tech support, or they're going to be looking for your contact details or coming through to chat about things, you can exclude them from clicking on your adverts. You can save a bit of budget there to spend on finding new customers. And then finally, we've got a thing called similar audiences. So I always include this in this part of the talk because you need to have remarketing turned on in order to access this. It's available across Google Search Network and the Google Display Network. And it's basically a way of finding new pre-qualified visitors that look like the people on your remarketing lists. If any of you have used Facebook lookalikes, or you've used any of the prospecting tools in some of the programmatic platforms, then this will make sense to you. It's fairly similar. And it's basically, you tend to find it's about 5 times larger than your remarketing lists. So this is a way of really accelerating stuff. And on average, Google tells us that advertisers who use similar audiences experience a 41% uplift in conversions. So it can be quite a big thing, and it can be quite a good way of getting in a lot of the kind of customers that you're used to and you want more of. And that is a real quick tour of audience advertising across search and display. And thanks for your time. Hopefully there was something useful there.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Gareth. I think there's a lot useful there, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think some people see PPC as a fairly easy thing, right? Writing some ad content, setting up a budget, but there's actually a lot more to it and a lot of tweaking to do. And yeah, double a conversion rate is huge when remarketing. That's a lot. So yeah, it's not just about spending money sort of aimlessly, is it? It's you've got to put it in the right places and try and refine it as much as possible. So yeah, that's really valuable content. Thanks very much, Gareth.
Thank you.